Thank you for having me. My name is Eric Garcia, pronouns he, him, his. Right now, I'm a school social worker in alternative education, and I have been working in alternative education for the past 2 years for the County Office of Education.
Okay. And how did you get in the field of education?
In the
What
field of
inspired you?
education,
What inspired you?
oh man, that's a good one. That's a big story.
Let's hear it.
For me, education, I didn't get involved in education like middle school, high school. Like I was going a different path. That was getting to me into somewhat trouble. And then I needed to go into the straight path or to like correct myself out. Then I joined the Marine Corps right after high school at the age of 18.
Mm,
And then with the Marine Corps, it just brought me great skills and changed me for the better. And it definitely straightened me up, that's for sure, in a good way. And I
yeah.
learned a lot of great skills. And then with the Marine Corps from my time of service, you also get a benefit. You get the GI Bill that helps pay or that pays for your tuition and pays for you to go to school. So that was my hustle. And that's kind of like what I tell my students if they are like interested in going to the military. I was like, hey, wouldn't you like to get paid to go to school right now? They're like, yeah. I was like, all right, so let me tell you about this. And then, so that's what I did for myself to get a degree. And then I didn't know what to do really. I knew college was important, or at least that's what I thought. But then it changed when my aunt, she is an English teacher at a middle school in South San Jose.
Hmm.
And then she was like, hey, Eric, go talk to this lady. And I was like, okay, I'll go talk to her. Aunt. And then the lady was her school social worker. And then the school social worker, she like had me come in on a day with her MSW interns. At the time, I was in college, but I didn't know the various degrees. I
Yeah.
thought it was all the same thing. And then I was like, okay, what is MSW? It was the Master's of Social Work interns that she had with her. And then I saw them have a meeting. And then after she talked to me, and then she was like, hey, Eric, like, have you ever thought about like what you could do for the community with your multiple positionalities, being a Mexican, male, veteran, and then being from the neighborhood yourself?
Hmm.
And I was like, oh, shoot. Like, I go, no, I didn't. And she told me about social work and then what I could do to like support others. And I was like, okay, cool. Then that's what I did from there. I changed my degree to, at that time, I was in community college.
Yeah.
I just got my general ed, but then went to San Jose State for social work, undergrad, and graduate school. And I just went full force with it.
Wow. That's pretty impressive. Just that one individual kind of opened your eyes and you saw something a little different. Just took that one person to just turn you just a little bit so they could like, I don't know, just let you see that it was possible that like you being in the military, you being male, you being Mexican, that's valuable. That's valuable, and you could touch so many lives, and you could connect with so many people if you leverage that.
100%. Then like that one person, and that's kind of like what motivated me to. When she was talking to me, that's what kind of she definitely gave me like or she let me know like the pathway I could take with it.
Yeah,
But then that's what I ran with too. Like being in social work, I was like, dang, like I could give back to the community, and then I could be when I was in high school, middle school, because I was not doing the right things.
yeah,
I was like, man, I could be that one person that I needed at that time, like a mentor, someone to be supportive. I was like, I could be that person that I needed when I was younger, and that's what I could do.
that's
So
good.
it definitely just takes, like you said, that one person,
One
and
person.
I'm pretty sure we all have a person, hopefully, that has impacted us or makes us want to do better. You know.
Yeah, and then going back to the military. Let's go back to military for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I remember I was in high school. I was a terrible student. I was a terrible student. I didn't know what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
I was always just not following any directions. I was really hard headed and stubborn and angry. All these things, right? And the military. I remember during that time. This is a long time ago. I graduated in 1995, and so during that time, I don't know if it's still possible now, but in high school, the military, the Marines would come onto campus. They'd be all in their suits or whatever. They would look sharp, and they would make you want to, just by looking at them, like, man, look at his presence. Look at this guy's presence. I want that type of presence. I want to join the Marines. I had no idea what it was about. I just saw a sharp looking man, and I was like, you know what? I want to be a sharp looking man too. That's what I want. And so just seeing that made me want consider it. I never went for, I never took the test or anything like that. But it just made me think about like, hey, I want to be just like this. I want this presence as a man. Did you feel that way at all?
Yeah, 100%. And then I think if you and I were in high school with each other, I think we would have totally been kicking it with each other, which may not been a good
Maybe,
beginning.
yeah,
But definitely, yeah, yeah. What? Yeah, no, you're totally right. I think it comes from like, because for me, I'm not gonna say for you, but for me, like I didn't see that growing up. I didn't see like positive males
yeah. Mhm.
that much around me.
Very
Like,
rare. Very
yeah,
rare.
Mexican person of
Yep.
color in the
Hmm.
community. Like I feel like it wasn't really present. And so I think because it was so foreign, that's what kind of like intrigued me too with it. And I was like, oh, like those uniforms are nice, you know what I'm saying? And then the presence of it, like what they tell you, like what they try to sell you to, like, oh, come over here and you be the best of the best, all this stuff. And then as a young person, I was like, man, I don't really know what I got going for myself. So I was like, this seems like the right avenue, because for
Yeah.
me there wasn't much opportunities. I grew up in Soledad, California, and Soledad is by Salinas, in Monterey County,
Hmm.
and there was a little farming community out there. Like we're not like LA or San Jose, where like every city's like kind of connected to each other. It's like we like going from one town like Soledad to Gonzales was like separated by 10 miles of like
Wow.
fields.
Wow.
So there wasn't much, and then Solid at the time had like 15,000 population, like residents living there.
Yeah.
So there wasn't much opportunity. Then to top it off, like we had a prison next door, and so it's like, all right, so you work in the fields or in the agriculture industry,
Hmm.
somehow, some way. You work at a taqueria or a
Hmm.
fast food joint, or you work for the prison, or you end up in the prison. That's kind of like what we said to ourselves.
Wow. Wow. And
Just
so you were saved. You were handpicked. You were plucked out of that environment, taking and you know what it going to what branch of military did you say you served in?
Marine Corps.
Marine Corps. Going to the Marine Corps, that's kind of your front line kind of stuff, and that was intense. And so you learned a lot of lessons. What did you learn? What were some lessons you learned the most in being a Marine?
I think because like coming from that small town, there wasn't much like diversity
Mhm.
out there. So I think like going to the military, like there is diversity out there,
Yeah,
different shapes, sizes, everything. So that you had to learn how to like collaborate, teamwork.
yeah.
You had to be disciplined, like coming like being a knucklehead and not having like any sort of structure or taking orders or being like rebellious. Like that's gonna change real quick.
Hmm.
So discipline, being a self starter, and then seeing that presence and being that presence. Like you start off as a junior marine, then of course like you're ranking up. So then as you rank up, then you have responsibilities where you have to take care of yourself, and then the marines in your charge. So accountability, being a leader, and what does that look like? Selfishness. So there's a lot of great skills I feel like I needed because I lacked or I didn't have any. So just like embedded those into me, and then I still carry those on to like even though like it's opposite side of the world, like being Marine Corps to like now social worker, I still bring those same skill sets to
Absolutely.
what I do.
They're universal. They're transferable.
Yeah.
Like when I was young, I had kids super early. I was
Mm,
super selfish, and like it was all about me and nobody else. And like I
yeah.
said, I was an angry, stubborn, hard-headed individual. And then when I had kids at a young age, I had to grow up super quick, and I had to learn all these skills you're talking about. That's man,
Mm,
it's like it's not about me anymore. It's about being selfless now. It's about my
mm,
kids and my family, and how do I provide for them, and how do I manage my time, and what do I do in these tough situations? Are you going to crumble, or are you going to persevere, and
mm,
that kind of stuff. And I took those same skills, like you were saying, and when I went to the classroom, I was like, okay, let me take these same skills that I would learn that
mm,
helped me become a better man, and apply them
mm.
to the classroom and teach them to my students. And so I'm
Yes.
I'm figuring when you got into the in your field, when you start working with kids, I'm sure that you applied that. What was your first job with kids?
First job was working for City Gilroy Recreation Department. I started off with like it was youth sports, but then
Perfect.
like yeah, yeah, I was coaching. I never I never imagined I was coaching like little soccer teams
Yeah.
like they're under 5 years old. You're just it's a great time with them. It's fun. It's a great time doing it. But then what intrigued me was I forgot what it was, but around the city of Gilroy, I think I had a fill in. I think that's what it was. But this other department, it was the youth center, and this was like a or it was an after school program for like low income families and students.
Yeah.
And so I went over there, then I saw like, oh man, like impacting them beyond sports. So I got interested, and I transferred over to that line of work, youth sports. Or I mean, at the youth center.
Yeah.
And at the youth center, it came with doing that. In the summertime, they had we had a youth or youth center like program during the summertime. Also did like late night gym, which is like the little block period at the gym to have like to keep kids off the streets and to be in like a positive environment. And that's what we did. That I was just like, I think like the universe was trying to persuade me like to go this way. And then I was just
Yeah.
like, I just felt it. I don't know what it was, but I just felt it. It just worked out really well too.
That's good. That's good. So you working with kids, then you got into the classroom. How
Correct.
did you get in the classroom? What was your first position in the classroom?
Correct. Yeah. Officially, like working for, well, during, at San Jose State, at least, at San Jose State in the social work program, you intern during like undergrad and graduate school too. It's a combination.
Yeah.
So in my final year, I went to go with that person that that school social worker who I talked to that got me into it. She was now my mentor and everything. So I did a first full circle moment where I went to go intern with her at her school district.
Yeah.
So that was like my first official, I guess you could say, like internship or like experience at in the field of education was the internship.
Yeah.
And then yeah, once I got into the classroom and then like doing the social work piece of it, of like checking in on students, like counseling, case management services, and doing like groups too. I was like, yeah, this is where I want to be.
That's good. And what did you notice? You being a young man yourself, what did you notice that is really impacting our students today when you first entered in? What was it that was impacting our kids today as a school
Um,
social worker? What did you notice?
Definitely, that was internship wise. That was 3 years ago, so that was like 2022. So we're coming out of the pandemic around that
Yeah.
time frame. I think we're like slowly integrating. Um, I think definitely saw like I mean, because I never had no like real, I guess, experience prior to the pandemic.
Hmm.
I saw like the way like students were coming back to the schools and them not being adjusted or acclimated to be like in the social environment to have to be in there for 6 to 8 hours a day.
Hmm.
um, Anxiety, anger, social skills may be missing or not developed because they were missing during those 2 or 3 year period that we're in the pandemic.
Yeah.
Um, so it was very interesting to see it when I like and coming to see it in the forefront too in the beginning as we're coming back from the pandemic. I was like, whoa, this is pretty interesting here.
Yeah, I definitely saw the same thing when they came out of the pandemic. Lot of anxiety, a lot of fear,
Mhm.
just fear. And when you're fearful, you don't perform well. You just don't perform well because you're full of fear. Then let's fast forward to 2025 when, all this stuff about immigration is happening right now where people are just being, just being taken away from their families, just being tackled on the streets and put in a car and, just being driven away. And, this has been happening for a full month now. This is all of June. Like I remember it was our getting close to graduation and ICE was, you know,
Mhm.
around schools, around neighborhoods. And this has been all of June. This has been happening all of June. August is gonna, we got July. It seems like it's gonna continue. I'm sure that all the students are watching on social media, on TikTok, on Instagram, watching all these little clips, worried about their own families. Maybe their own families have been obtained, right? Detained or whatever. Um, and then we start school in August. We start school in August with all of this anxiety and fear amongst the students, fear amongst the families, fear of budget cuts. Are you we still going to have jobs because of, all the bills being passed, and is there money for education? Is there still money for programs, after school programs, school lunch? This is a big question. I'm over here building it up.
No, I'm
But
glad you bring this up.
like you got the programs might be cut, after school programs, lunch programs, programs where kids rely on food. This is the only hot meal they get, some kids. Um, and even a position like yours, a school, social worker, that might be on the chopping blocks as well, like stuff like that. All these mental health programs. We start in August, and that's how we're going to start off. That's how we're going to start off in August. Just
Yeah,
this whole fear.
yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of this?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up, and that's why I really like appreciated about the podcast was like us having these type of conversations and supporting each other. I think like with all this, like you said, like we like it sounds like we're naming everything under the sun, but it's true. It's like these services are getting cut. Our students, our families, their fear. Like I remember when this was first coming out, I think like when the immigration, like first of ICE coming out, like that was like March and April, like prior to like even the summer.
Mm-hmm.
I was just like even getting whispers and the like everyone was like in shock and fear. And it's like, what can we do? Supportive services getting cut. For us, for me, I'll also be honest about it too. Like, well, I got affected by the reduction in force.
Mm-hmm.
I know, and then with my previous organization, like a lot of people did, and it's like a lot of people that were doing the good work that was working with the students and families and supporting them, and it's like that's getting limited. And then the resources available out there, like they're in shock and like they're like we don't even like the some organizations didn't know if they're going to be here next year to
That's right.
support and like do the good work. It's like this is crazy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just it was a lot to wrap around. Like for me, it was hard to process at times. Like what was happening, like nationally in the state, locally, in the organization, in our communities, what was happening to adhering with our students and families. It was a lot to process, that's for sure. And then coming back, and then our students, I feel like the generation now, or yeah, the generation now, they are aware. I mean, it's out there. Social media is everywhere. You know what I'm saying? So they are getting, I want to say, like more woke. They're being more attuned to it. They're recognizing like how policies affect, like from the national level, like down to them on the local level.
Yeah.
And that's where like we need to continue with like the education behind it, like how we can make change for the better in the future. However, for now, it's very scary. And then how do we support us being in our line of work, staff members, principal, vice principal, social worker? How do
Yeah.
we take care of ourselves too? And it's just a lot to deal with. And like, how can we support the students? And that's the big question of like, how's it going to go next year or next year? Well, not even next year, in a couple months,
Couple
next
months.
school
Yeah.
year.
One month. August. We got July, and then August we start.
Correct.
It's a big question. There's a lot of unanswered, questions here. Sometimes I feel like in education, like prior to all of this happening, my podcast, we're talking about like classroom management and, how do you do these things and build relationships, whatever, like, and like these little small technical things about classroom management. But now it's like, well, man, we're going to go back to school and we're all in the same boat. Like, we're all in this together. We're all in this together. I'm in this school with a bunch of fearful people. There's a bunch of teachers.
Mm,
Just take the teachers. You got teachers who have parents who these teachers might be first generation teachers, and their parents are immigrants, and their
mm,
teachers worried about their own parents being taken away, stuff like that.
mm,
You got students with the same predicament. We're all in the same predicament, same thing. First generation, some of their family members might be taken away. That's a crazy thought. It's just fear in the school. You got this whole birthright citizenship thing being revoked. Like that's crazy. That's wow. Like when that could happen, like, I could, some people could lose their citizenship, and then they're gonna have to be the ones that are forced to fight it in the court. Like they're gonna be the one. Like that's crazy, Like, and so you got a whole school filled with all of this.
Yeah.
We're all in the same boat. We're all being affected by all. Every one of us are being affected by it. I feel like it's we have to come together somehow. Somehow we can't be divided. It can't be, admin versus teachers and teachers versus student, like parents versus. It's like, no, we're all in the same boat. We all need to take care of each other. We all need to make sure that we're okay. We all need to teach these kids as best as we possibly can and inform them as much as we possibly can so they could be as successful as they possibly can, so they could change things, change policies, become great leaders, find positions where they could have some sort of power to change things. We need to build these kids up. I work at a school, where it's like 98% of the students are, brown students. 98% of brown students. Like we're all in this together, and I think that we need to remember that we need to take care of each other. We need to remember that we need to build each other up. We need to make each other as best we possibly can. Well, there's no need to fight each other. Like there's no need to cause division amongst ourselves. We're all poor. We're compared to like all these bills being passed where they favor all. We're all poor. I mean, I don't know, man. Those are thoughts that are going through my head last few days.
No, I think you're 100% correct about it too. Like if you think back at 2020 when the George Floyd action happened as well too, it's like that shook the world,
Yeah.
And I think not to glamorize it, but then the beauty of the people coming together like no other. That I feel for me, I mean, I haven't been on this earth for that long, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
But then for that to happen during during that time frame, people coming together was a must.
Yeah.
And I feel like that needs to happen too, like how what you're saying about like us coming together like no other before. Like, yes, it's insane, like what's happening in society. Like, I never thought, I was like, this really could happen. I was like, this is I'm in disbelief right now. And then at this point, I'm just like, what else could happen? I'm just like, that's scary to think, you know what I'm saying? So like us coming together, then I feel like it should not be like a sheltering of like with our students of like hiding it. It is. I know some people probably will not favor that. Like education should just be education. But as we see, like from the pandemic, like we need the whole holistic approach of like taking care of the whole student, not just beyond academics. It's about their mental health, their emotional needs, nutrition, shelter, looking into them or helping out whatever way we can. And then for educators, like we're the same. We need that ourselves, you know. So it's like, how do we get all those? How do we do that with our students? How do we do that with ourselves? And I think if we're all able to come together, like you're saying, like uniting and not being divided, it's like, hey, like as administrators, like, hey, I know like I have this title, but like we're in this. Like,
We're all in this together. Like we're there. All of our jobs are on the chopping blocks. Like
mhm,
my
yeah,
job, your job, all of our jobs are on the chopping blocks. Like all of our kids are gonna get affected by this. Like we're all in it together, and we just gotta pull together. And so coming in, August is gonna roll around, and it seems like this is just gonna continue to happen, and bills are gonna be passed, and it. We're gonna see each other in August, and it's like, okay, the conversations that we have with our students and our staff are going to be extremely important. And how do we stay together, and it's how do we keep each other safe? Those are things that need to be addressed at the beginning of the school year. And to me, like classroom management is going to go a little, um, it's like more than that now. It's like, yeah, classroom management routines and procedures and go over all these things, but like, how are you and how do we take care of you and how do you feel? You had made a statement like sometimes you said something like the classroom is a classroom or teaching is or something like that. I forget what you just said, but it was like when you walk into a classroom filled with like 20 students who all are fearful and you yourself are fearful,
Yeah.
it's hard to just say, let's just teach, let's just learn science. Let's
Yeah.
just sit here and talk about math. Let's
Yeah.
and strictly math. We could just talk about math and get through lesson, 40 minutes of whatever integers. Let's just do that. It's kind of hard when people have all these other things on their mind. It's kind of hard. Even the podcast, even this podcast right now. So
Mhm.
before every podcast, I sit down for about a half an hour before the podcast, and I just write. I got a little list right here, little paper right
Nice.
here, right? Who you are, how many years you've taught, where you came from, what are some things you want to talk about. And so I'm sitting there, but I'm thinking like, man, but there's so many other things that are going to affect us that are more important than this little list that I have in front of me right here. And, you know, um, it's just hard. It's
Yeah.
hard and it's a lot. And, you had mentioned different positionalities. You being a Mexican male educator who deals with social emotional health, you play a big part. You will play a big part in all of this. You will be talking to the students that are dealing with the most, I don't know, the most, they're the ones that are having the hardest times. You're going to be the one that's being the frontline person helping these students. How are you going to address that?
Yeah, definitely. And then before I go to that question, I think that's great. Also, like that's how it is, like in social work too. Like let's say I build a report with a student. We have a treatment plan. We're working on some things. Maybe I have depression, and then something happened last week. But then when I have a session with a student, we're not talking about what I want to talk about. The student presents something, and then we're going with it. And it's very true. Like we can't ignore about what's going on in society. And then yeah, we have a list, but that we shouldn't push our own agenda out there. At least for me, that's what I feel like.
Yeah.
And then you're just hearing from the peoples about, hey, what do you all need? Like being an administrator, or for myself, is like, what do you need? What's important? How do you want to address this? And being okay with having those conversations too. I think that goes back into like cultural competency, and response to what's going on, like anti-racist practice of like that's like we can't ignore,
Hmm.
or at least we shouldn't. We shouldn't ignore, and we should address like what's going on and what can we do, or how you say like build a safety. And some people, and I just say like because I know there's old school mentalities like, oh, we shouldn't talk about this, but it's like no, creating safety means that we're able to have these kind of conversations together, and then hopefully something comes about it positively.
Yeah.
So doing that. So I wanted to say that like that's very. I appreciate you for doing that. And then going back to the question, it was
How are
about
you going to deal with all that?
yeah,
How are
how
you
do
going to deal with
we
that as a school social
yeah,
worker?
yeah. I think definitely like how I would say is just like definitely look in the community. What do they need? Administrative staff. Like I'll be going to wherever I go. If I'm starting off new, or even just like if I were to stay on like where my last place was, I would just talk to the administrator like, hey, what's going on? What are the needs, and also hear it from the staff. What do they see from their perspective? And
Yeah.
then the same thing from the students too is like, what do you need? What's your perspective? How are you doing? Checking with like all the levels and seeing what's the needs are from them. Because I can have an idea, just like what we're talking about. Like I have these set questions, but these questions don't even address like what needs to happen or needs to be worked on or anything.
Yeah.
Then there's no point of doing it. So I'm going to hear from them. But what do they need? And from there, I'm going to do my thing of researching or gathering information or sources of what do they need from me or how I could play a part. If not me, then how could I connect them to? And then how to build a safe climate, like you're talking about, so that we can have these kind of conversations too. So that's what I would. I know it's open ended. It's very broad,
Fine.
but it's not going to be me pushing my agenda or like what I think is. I'm going to be coming in and hearing from them.
Yeah. And how do you build rapport with students? How do you do it?
Report with students. I worked with alternative education in the past 2 years.
When you say that, what does that mean? Alternative? Because I know I have my idea of what it means, but what is
Oh,
it for you? What exactly is that?
yeah, good question. Okay, cool. Yeah, just overall in the same boat. Alternative education for out here in Santa Clara County, it means youth. So I worked in the South, so Santa Clara County. I worked on the South Santa Clara County. So then we got two little towns. It was Morgan Hill and Gilroy that will come to alternative education if they're expelled from their district.
Okay.
And we had students from middle school and high school. And that's what we did. Then also on my side, it's kind of like where the site that we're located, it was like an elementary school like in Gilroy. But then that school closed down due to low enrollment throughout the district. So they shut that school down. And then so alternative education took up a couple classrooms, and there's a couple other classrooms put on by the county. And I also supported another hybrid school, 16 to 24 year olds, to get their high school diploma. And that was another alternative
Wow.
route for them to go to school. So I would support both of them. And then what I would do to build rapport, I would try to get them, I would go to the front gate where they're getting dropped off. I'll just try to like make my presence be known. I try to say hi to them, get to know their name, whether it be out there like them getting checked in, or like I'll go into the art room because the art room they had an art teacher who was a great person, and they made amazing art pieces that they worked on. I would go in there because it was kind of free flow type room where they're working on their independent projects. So I'll go in there and say, hey, hey, I noticed you're new. What's your name? That kind of thing. Get to know them, introduce myself. I was like, hey, when we get a chance, I operated a wellness center. I was like, when we get a chance, like, is it cool if we do like a wellness center tour? And they'll be like, yeah. I go, okay. And then I would go. Then a couple of days later, because I'll let them get acclimated to the environment, because it's a lot of new learning, a lot of new people if they're coming there to the school for the first time. Then I'll go with them to go to the wellness center just to check out the area. And I'll be like, hey, is it cool if I tell you like who I am, what I do? And is it cool if I ask you some questions about yourself just to get to know each other? And then they'll be like, yeah, okay. And then I'll just tell them like, confidentiality, what my role is here. I was like, hey, I'm not here to get you in trouble. I'm not an administrator. I'm not the teacher.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm the mental health person. Everything you say here stays here unless then I go into confidentiality, what that means. Services provided, resources, and I'll just double check to see if they understood everything. And after that, I was like, hey, is it cool if I just ask you some questions? I'll just get to know them, like some background history of like, how old they were, what school did they come from, and those kind of things about just to get to know them. And then I would do that to every student because it's not what we call like a comprehensive school, like a traditional school where, 600, 700 students, 1,000 students, whatever it is. At a time on campus for the alternative education school, there would be like 15 to 20 students, and there would be like 5 to 6 staff members. Like we had like 2 teachers, 2 paraeducators, special education teacher. We had a counselor and a principal, so that we get to know each other. The staff
Yeah.
wise, the
Yeah.
students. You're gonna see me, I'm gonna see you, type thing, and then I would just get to know them too. Of like, okay, like what I would ask them the question like towards the end. I was like, hey, what got you here to alternate education school?
Yeah.
And then we'll just talk about that. And I was like, okay. I was like, okay. And then we'll go into whatever it was. And then I was like, hey, I'll be around. If you ever want to talk, let me know. And then because of like I'm at a small environment, it's not like a comprehensive school where I can use the intercom or I send a pink slip out to a student, whatever. I will go and we would normalize mental health component because some of the students, depending on the district, they needed that in the rehabilitation, what they call the rehabilitation plan to go back to their district. It was mental health counseling.
Yeah.
So then I'll be like, so it's normalized over there, and everyone knows me. And then I see them, they see me. And then if I talk to a student, I'm like, hey, hey, is it cool we do a check-in? And then I would just ask them discreetly on the side, and then that's how we would do the thing. So just like doing things, so like building consistency, getting familiar with the area, normalizing mental health around there, getting to know their name. If I hadn't seen them coming like at school yesterday, I wouldn't ask them like in a judgmental way. But I was like, hey, I noticed you weren't here yesterday. Like, is everything okay? And then they'll tell me, and then I was like, okay, that's good. I'm glad to see you today. I appreciate you being here. It's good seeing you. Something along those lines. And let me tell you, because now they're in alternative education, they never had those sometimes they never had those interactions of
Right.
like, they would get punitive, like, oh, you weren't here yesterday, you're
Hmm.
ditching school, whatever, da da da. But it's like, no, that doesn't happen around here. It's just like, hey, I see you. I appreciate you being here. I get it. And then the struggles that the students come from is like them making a school today. That's a win. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um,
How do you take what you're saying right there and apply it to a comprehensive school, a school of 600 students,
Good
so that they're
question.
not going to alternate education? They're staying at the school. How do you take that into the school? Because there are teachers that don't know how to do what you just said.
Yeah, good question. Yeah. Um, so that'll be a teacher with 30 students, just taking the time getting to know them when they come in, welcoming them in the door, welcoming them, not questioning, nothing like that. How are you doing today? So, John, good seeing you today. How you been? If you have an opportunity, I know things come up, you know what I'm saying, but I think those little moments of getting to know someone or having a connection with, I think it means a lot for some students. It means the world, you know, because they don't have that. So it's doing that and checking with them, like what we talked about, like not pushing your own agenda of like, oh, today we're going to talk about, you know, two plus two, whatever. Um, it's like what can we do together to get to know each other? Having a positive quote on the board, uh, us reading it together to ground us, start off the day well, something like that. And if you have the let's say like if everything's all good, you have the wellness center. It's building a relationship with the wellness center, getting to know them or them getting to know you, referring out where are those people, where are they located, or what days do they come on to the school site to provide services to students.
Yeah.
Um, they'll be doing those things.
So how do we prevent students from going to alternate education?
Good question.
Yeah, how do we prevent that? Because I'm sure that you guys are the last stop, right? That you're the last stop before, I guess, I don't know what's after that, maybe incarceration or something. But you are the last stop. How do we how do we prevent students from going to your schools?
Yeah, I think that's the $1 million question, right? Because it'll be great because that's what it is, right? It's like having the time. And I know educators, it's not a knock on them. It's just the time to do it, right? And the training. And I think it comes from like the confidence. I think some folks may not want to say things or do some things because they're like, oh man, I don't know, I don't want to say the wrong thing. But taking the time sometimes it just means the world, and that could be the
Yeah,
difference. And if not, then refer out to services if you have some out on your campus, restorative justice practices, not punitive. Um, you know, healing circles, those things that's not punitive to do, and looking at alternative practices to restore what maybe the harm was done in that school site.
yeah. I feel like you, as an educator, you gotta be human. You gotta be a human being, and you have to be able to be relatable. And you have to be vulnerable, and you can't just be like, I'm just here to teach the curriculum. I work from 8 o'clock to 2:30, and then that's it. It's more like you have to be you have to make those connections by being relatable and human and saying good morning, like you were saying good morning. How are you guys today? It's good to see you. Welcome, welcome. Um, sharing your life story, sharing where you came from, and then speaking up when things bother you, speaking up in the class when things bother. I don't like when you speak when I speak. This is the
Mm,
rule that we talked about. These are the ground rules, and we're going to follow these ground rules right here. Just those things, just being human. I feel like you make those connections, and I feel like teachers need to do that and be brave about it, be confident about it, don't be afraid to speak up, and this is my room and I own this room. And I'm a firm believer in, at the beginning of the school year, it's the teacher's room. It's my
yeah,
room. It's
yeah,
These are my rules. And as the year goes on, I start to release my room to the students, and then it becomes a student's room, because now they know all the rules, all the procedures. They know how to do everything in here. It's more like I'm the facilitator now, because I've showed them how we're supposed to act in here, showed them that these are the character that we're going to do. We're going to be respectful, responsible. We're going to be, these type of things. And I taught them all of that. And so now I could release my classroom to my students, and now it becomes their room, and I'm just the facilitator in the classroom. I think that's an important piece that we need to do as educators, is to release that to the students. First, it's my room. I'm not trying to be the cool guy and try to be like, hey, I'm not gonna have any rules and I'm not gonna have any procedures. I just want to be friends with you. And
Yeah.
no, that's not how it goes. This is how it is, and we're gonna do it this way.
Yeah.
Then, sometime in December, it's like I can relax. I could
Yeah.
ease up. This is your room now. You know the rules. After a while, the students already know what to do. And I think that that's a skill that needs to be taught to educators. And I try to do that on the podcast, on my TikTok or whatever, my Instagram, to try to teach that. I think that's an important piece. Because we don't want a lot of students to go to alternate. I'm glad that you got there is an alternate education, but I think the goal is to not have so many students go to alternate education. Um, yeah, but so
Yeah. I
that's
think 100%. If I could add on to that too, is like I get it. Like educate, like classrooms, like teachers. You have a different role, like compared to like a mental health person. And like what you're saying is like yes, agreements. Like what we do, like if we were to run groups in the mental health, it's like we're creating agreements in the first session of like what's
yep.
okay, what's not okay, and everyone's speaking up. It's like, hey, this isn't my rules. This is our agreement. And hopefully y'all know, like, giving our word is like us. We have to, that's like signing a contract. That means that we're going to follow through with what we do. And
Mm,
let's say, like, we have a broad term. Someone says respect. Like, okay, let's break down what does respect mean? Because I bet you my respect and maybe like your respect is different from my respect. So it's like, let's all get on the same page and clarify that just so that we all understand because we all come from different backgrounds, different experiences, different interpretation of things too. So us getting on the same page, like us coming together, like what we were talking about earlier, I think is a need too. So doing that in a format to have that buy-in too from the students, like, oh yeah, like, hey, I don't like being disrespected.
yeah.
How does that make you feel? Then you say age appropriately, whether you do high school, middle school, elementary, and hopefully it's just like these things that little things that you just hope. And I feel like I wish there was like a study where the students who come to alternate education. I wish we could try to look at like the California Healthy Kids survey of like there's that one subject where it's like, do you have or have you ever had or something like that a relationship with a staff member on site?
Oh yeah.
And I feel like where I've seen, I feel like that's pretty low in some places. And it's like that one, like what we're talking about in the beginning, that one person, if they would have had someone that they could have gone to or feel supported by, how much would that have changed or impacted a person when they needed it the most?
That's a good point. It's a very good point, and I feel like in order for that there to be a person on campus like that, that person has to be able to accept the student for who they are and what they say and what they do, and without judgment. They have to be able to do all of that without judgment. The student could act up and act a fool and curse you out and throw things in the classroom and do all that, and then you have to be able to forgive them and work with them and love them, no, even when they make mistakes. And
Yeah,
that is very difficult to do.
yeah, yeah,
And then you start to educators will start to blame the parents. Well, if the parents get involved, I always call the house and nobody ever answers the phone, and we always invite the parent to come inside the classroom but the parent never comes, and the parent never comes back to school night, and then you get this whole bitterness of like, well, if I'm not going to work as hard as the parent, I'm not going to work as hard as the student. I'm not going to do that. And that's what develops in educators is this bitterness and this anger of like, man, if their own family's not working as hard as
yeah,
then why would I work that hard? If the student's not working that hard, I'm not gonna. If they want to quit on themselves, then as long as the student's quiet right here in the corner right here, as long as the student puts their head down and doesn't interrupt the rest of the class, then I'm good with that. I'm good with that. I'll let them sleep. I'll let her sleep. You know, these are real thoughts. These are real ideas. These are things that teachers, educators say, they think about, and the person that makes the difference is the person that could take all of that and be like, this is still a kid. This is still somebody's child. This is a child of God, let's just say. This is this is an important person that just needs some guidance, that needs love, that needs a person to connect with. And I'm gonna try my best for 180 days, the students in my classroom. I'm gonna try my best,
Yeah.
and my that's all I could do for 180 days. I could do that.
Mm.
That's the person that's gonna make the difference. That's the person that's gonna make the difference. But it's not easy. It's not
No.
easy. It's not easy at all. And I always talk about this on my podcast and my little clips. Everything I say, it's not easy, but it's doable. And if you're able to do it, if you're able to make these connections, then it makes a world of difference. You could turn a whole life around. And I'm sure you guys are doing that in alternate education, turning lives around.
Anyway, I appreciate that. I think that's what I kind of got like after I started listening to your podcast. I kind of saw like the same underlying message to it all. It's just like be who you are. I mean, we could say like, oh, I give fist bumps and stuff like that, but it's like being who you are, bringing out the authentic self, and being who you are as a person, and then to create those relationships. I think they'll be tremendous, like what you're saying, to
Mm-hmm.
do. It is a quick band-aid, quick fix to suspend, expel. Oh, that person's putting their head down. I'm gonna just put that head down because it's gonna create less friction.
Yeah.
It's the path of least resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just do what I do and like let them do that and let me do those things. But I appreciate you saying that too of like the unconscious bias or the bias we may have, and like, oh, and then having that storyline of like, oh, that kid's just bad. Oh, his parents are not involved or they're not doing anything. So why am I going to do something?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not supported by my administrators.
Yep.
Let me do this stuff. So there's like this whole flurry, right, that happens.
Yep.
But it's remembering like this student is developing. This student is, let's be honest, they're kids still.
Yeah.
And then this kid has gone through so much and they're making best out of the cards that they're dealt with.
That's right.
It's tremendous what they're even able to do right now. Um, it does take a lot, like what you're saying. Oops. It does take a lot what you're saying. Like if they made a mistake, it's like looking at like, hey, we're all not perfect, but tomorrow let's start over fresh. What did we learn from this situation? How can we improve ourselves?
Yeah. Like if every environment that you walk into, nobody likes you. Like if every environment that you walk into, like it's a hard environment, and even at your own house, it's a hard environment, and then you go to school and it's a hard environment. Nobody really likes you, and it might be your fault. It might be your fault that you act up and you say some things, and it might be your fault. But then there goes first grade and second grade and third grade. Now you're in fourth grade, and it's like now you start to realize, like, you start to develop this anger and this like, I don't like adults. I don't like adults because every adult that I've interacted with, they don't like me. They don't like me, and so now you have this defense mechanism that every adult that you have in contact with, there's a wall, and you're not gonna let them in because every adult has not treated you fairly in your own mind. In your own mind, every adult has not treated you fairly. They never gave you a shot, and you get older and older, and that wall gets taller and thicker. And now you can't penetrate it now, and that wall has to be penetrated early on, or hopefully later on, and where there's somebody that actually is able to penetrate that wall. And again, the way you penetrate that wall is not through suspension, it's not through detention, it's none of that. It's like with love and caring. I care about you. I want the best for you. Look at me. I want the best for you. I care about. I'm not lying to you. You have to really penetrate that with love and kindness, and also standards. You have to hold high standards as well. I care about you, but you still got to do these things. You messed up, yeah, and I still love you, but you're still gonna repair this harm that you created. That doesn't go away. So again, it's good. It's hard work. It's good work. It needs to be done. And it's just the reality of how things are right now. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate. Like what you're saying is very correct. And even if you're like a staff member, it's like you say something along like you behind, like not when the students are around, but you talk to another coworker or even you tell it to someone else,
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, that I have this one student.
Mm-hmm.
You talk trash, But then you show up in school and you're like, how's it going? And you try to put on a front, like, these students, because they could tell you're faking the funk.
Mhm.
And it's like that doesn't, and then they know you have this narrative about them. And if you do have this narrative about them, that you're doing something implicit to it, and you're putting like a self fulfilling prophecy on them, and then that what are they going to do? They're going to believe that narrative that everyone's telling them. They're gonna, even if they're not doing those things, they're like, you know what? They already say I'm doing this, so you know what? I'm gonna go show out. I'm gonna do this thing. And
That's
so
right.
it's very much having this like compassion, what you're talking about, being able to do that with the students, and it is very challenging. And in my beginning sessions with my students, it is very much that, and it's very unfortunate if you look at like trauma. What happens? It's not. It's most of the time it's caused by other humans, which is crazy to think. And then it's them being involved in multiple systems, such as like the foster care system, juvenile justice system, these systems of oppression, which is very, very unfortunate. And then meeting sessions that I'm doing with my students for alternative education because they have this thick narrative, they've been hurt, they have trauma. I'm just trying to build that trust rapport with them for a cool minute. And there's some
Mhm.
students in the beginning were like, some students will say something along those lines of like, I don't talk very much and I'm not gonna say anything. And in my head, I'm just like, all right, don't worry. Like
Yeah.
you'll get there one day. It's gonna feel so good when you do. And even if they don't, hey, and sometimes even having that person that doesn't have an agenda that's there for them, sometimes they never experience that. And so that's very forward to them too. And they're testing you. And they're gonna call you out there and try to do some crazy things because they want to see you be those other people that hurt them before
That's
too.
right.
Like, and to be like, no, you're fake. And then that's what they're
Mhm.
will try to do as a defense mechanism, like you're saying. So it very much is like, how do we be this? How do we allow this acceptance? How do we, and even if like a student that never doesn't talk, if them to be able to just trust you, that's an intervention right there. That's huge. That could help them long term down the road. Um,
That's
yeah.
good. That's good stuff. So, Eric, we're coming toward the end of the podcast right here, and toward the end of the podcast, I always ask my guests, what are some tips that you could give to somebody that maybe has struggled like you, was a difficult student like you, but is thinking about going into the field of education, maybe thinking about being a school social worker, maybe thinking about being a classroom teacher, maybe thinking about just working with youth in a positive way, right? Same situation that you went through. What are some tips that you could give them? Anything, one or two tips.
I would say never leave any what ifs on the table, such as like, oh, when you're 80, 90 years old, let's say you're on your deathbed and you look back at life and be like, oh man, what if I would have done that? What if I would have taken that leap? For me, I never want that. Of like, I want to live as best as I can. So I would say that to other people, like, never leave the what ifs on there. Do everything that you want to do. That's what I would say for one thing. Another thing is keep that flame lit. And what I mean by that is like having that flame in your heart, like your passion, your what you're motivated about. Keep that going, protect it, put on boundaries, do things that you enjoy doing, and keep moving forward. And make sure you have that flame lit, whatever that is, and to feel that flame so it can keep going on.
Perfect, perfect. Well, Eric, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I greatly appreciate your wisdom and your advice and your tips, and just hearing your story. Um, Coming from a student with difficult behavior, going through the military, and then working in school mental health. So, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
100%. Thank you for the opportunity, John.